Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University School of Journalism and New Media Studies, SOJNMS. Certificate in Community Radio, CCR, English. Course 2. CCRBJM002 Operating A, Community Radio. Block-4 Sustainability. Unit 13 Developing a Business Plan. 13.0 Introduction. A community radio can sustain itself on donor funding or the internal resources of the NGO or educational institution that holds the CR license. But the topic here is not about basic survival, but about being a successful community radio broadcaster. For a variety of good reasons, editorial independence, for instance, community radio should be self-sustaining. Though CR stations serve a social cause and are not run for profit, they are permitted to earn sufficient revenues to run themselves without being a burden to the community. The crisis usually comes when donors withdraw their support or the license permission holder faces other demands on its funds. In theory, community radio stations are expected to fund and manage their own operations after an initial period of hand-holding. Advertising is expected to bring in sufficient income to run the station, but this is sometimes difficult, if not impossible, in rural and remote communities where the local economy is poor. In this unit, we shall discuss how a community radio station can sustain itself financially without compromising its core values. 13.1 Objectives. In this unit, you will learn times the basics of expenditure for a community radio station, times how to generate sufficient revenue to run successfully, times different methods of generating income on air as well as off air, times rules and regulations governing income generation, especially advertising, times 13.2 Expenditure for a community radio station. Before drawing a business plan for a community radio station, let us first get a basic understanding of the money required for the normal running of a community radio station. We are looking at an affordable sum of 55,000 rupees monthly. Expenditure. Given below is a basic expenditure model for a CR station running for 8 hours daily. Time, staff salary and honorarium for volunteers artists, 25,000 rupees. Times electricity, water, establishment charges etc., 3,000 rupees. Times expenditure on consumables, stationery, batteries etc. hours. 5,000. Times maintenance charges for equipment at 10% of capital expenditure, hours. 6,000. Times local travel and hospitality charges, hours. 5,000. In addition there is the spectrum usage fee, 19,700 rupees per year, approx, charged by WPC. Now that we have drawn up a basic expenditure chart, let us look into various methods of generating revenue. 13.3 Methods of income generation. Revenue generation for community radio can come from both broadcast or on-air activities and non-broadcast or off-air or below-the-line activities. Income from ad vertising is a typical on-air revenue, while membership fees and donations are typical non-broadcast revenues. 13.3.1 Broadcast revenue. Revenue from advertisements is one of the major sources of income in a community radio station. India's CR policy allows 5 minutes of advertisements per hour of broadcast. As we have discussed earlier, in Rules and Regulations, Course 1, Block 4, all the advertisements broadcast by a CR station have to abide by the community radio guidelines, as well as the advertising code of All India Radio. Advertising code. Advertising on community radio should conform to the laws of the country and should not offend against morality, decency and religious beliefs of the people and should not violate the program code. When accepting advertisements, the CR station should always ensure that the consumers, who are members of the community, are protected. This is Especially true of vulnerable groups like women and children. No advertisement should be accepted that shows gender bias or undermines the dignity of women or takes advantage of the natural credulity and sense of loyalty of children. Times. It is not allowed to advertise products like liquor, cigarettes and other tobacco products on radio. Among the advertising codes and laws that CR broadcasters should be familiar with are the Code of Ethics for Advertisement in India issued by the Advertising Council of India, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, 1940, Consumer Protection Act, 1986, Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, 1954, Pharmacy Act, 1948, Price Competition Act, 1955. Indecent Representation of Women, Prohibition Act, 1986, etc. Supposing a particular community radio station broadcasts 8 hours of program every day, then 40 minutes of advertising time is available per day. If the station charges, say, 1 rupee advertisement fee per second, then it can earn revenue of 300 rupees per hour, which means 2,400 rupees for a day, 8 hours broadcast. This amounts to hours 72,000 per month, which more than the money needed to run the CR station. Of course, this is a hypothetical situation, since many CR stations would like to charge more than Rs L0 for a 10-second advertisement, but they would be unlikely to sell the entire 300 seconds of available commercial time per hour of broadcast. Now comes the challenge. With 40 minutes of advertising time every day, what kind of advertisements can a community radio broadcast? And where do you look for advertising? In a CR station? 13.3.1.1 Advertisements from local businesses and services. Community radio stations, as mentioned earlier, can broadcast advertising and announcements relating to local events, local businesses and services, and employment opportunities. Basically, advertising is only about getting a message from the seller to the buyer. If CR station caters to a fishing community, the local shops selling fishing equipments like nets, motors, etc., could advertise over the radio station and reach their target audience easily, since both the vendors and the customers live within the coverage area of the radio station. Advertisement in the L-call radio is useful as it offers information in the local dialect and also refers to a source for the equipment that is known accessible to the community. For the advertiser, the cost involved in advertising through a community radio station is definitely lower than any commercial channel. Advertisement on the CR station could work out to be advantageous for the local vendors as well as the radio station. 13.3.1.2 Local announcements. The community radio could tie up with local institutions, schools, etc., which fall under the coverage area and announce dates of admission, where to get forms, examination schedule, and results. A local school could give a list of successful students in each class in final examinations, etc., for a very nominal amount. Thus, the school gets good publicity and the students and their families would be happy to hear their names being broadcast by the station. This could turn out to be good publicity for the radio station, too, and will strengthen its linkages with the community. 13.3.1.3 Greetings through community radio. Times. A community radio can offer to be more personal than a commercial radio. Since a community radio has a limited target audience, a nearly complete database of people living in the target area could be obtained by asking members of the community to pay a nominal fee of, say, 10 rupees. The presenters could wish them on their birthdays, wedding anniversaries, etc. This program could be made much more interactive when friends or relatives wish their loved ones through the radio. Advertisements of such kind could also help the community radio build a better rapport with the community apart from becoming a good source of revenue. 13.3.1.4 Classified advertisements. A community radio station could earn money through local classified advertisements, which would suit its target audience. Classified ads are usually booked by individuals, small groups, or businesses to advertise small items, simple services or personal needs, which meet the requirements of the CR guidelines that only advertising and announcements relating to local events, local businesses and services and employment opportunities shall be allowed. Over community radio. 13.3.1.5 Social marketing. Social marketing refers to the use of commercial marketing techniques, like advertising. But it is restricted only to social purposes. Social organizations like non-government organizations, NGOs, and also government departments pay for production and/or airtime costs to create and run short socially relevant messages. It should be noted that under the present community radio guidelines, sponsored programs are not permitted on CR stations, except programs sponsored by central and state governments and other organizations to broadcast public service information. Such socially relevant programming usually relate to topics like agriculture, health or development efforts which would be of use to the target community. For example, when cigarette advertising was banned on electronic media in Nepal, the Government Health Ministry offered funds to radio stations to run health warnings about the dangers of smoking. 13.3.1.6 Public Service Announcements, PSA. Public service announcements are jingles or radio announcements which are broadcast by the state or state-sponsored organizations in the interests of the public. These range from health hazard warnings to announcements on rainwater harvesting, anti-smoking messages, HIV, AIDS, etc. The central and the state governments also come out with special announcements during an epidemic or natural disaster or for campaigns like the Pulse Polio campaign. Since public service announcements, like those relating to government schemes on health, education, National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, etc., are particularly required in rural and remote areas of the country, community radio stations in such locations would naturally attract such advertisements and earn good money to broadcast them. However, all PSs are not paid for. The CR station itself has a social commitment to broadcast PSs and should carefully balance the need to earn revenues against its own social and developmental objectives. PSA spots, as short radio advertisements are called, when broadcast along with the regular programs, earn a great deal of goodwill for the station and gives it credibility. 13.3.17 Broadcast projects. Times some government departments have started taking interest in communication at the grassroots level using CR station. These are like weekly or daily broadcasts for which the department pays a sum of money. The programs are made by CR station with help from local volunteers, community members and locally available experts. The Department of Science and Technology, DST, Department of Health and Family Welfare, Department of Rural Development, Department of Agriculture, Disaster Management, etc., and multilateral developmental organizations like UNESCO, UNICEF, FAO, etc. All have programmans in this category broadcast from different CR stations. Access study. The campus-based community radio station Anna FM 90.4 MHz, located in the Anna University campus, Chennai, Tamil Nadu, procured a project called Sakthi Arivaidi, which translates as Know Your Power, Women, from the Department of Science and Technology, DST. This series was aimed at spreading science awareness among community women living in the target area. It was a year-long project with main topics like women's health, environmental awareness, food and nutrition, etc. covered on a monthly basis. Subtopics such as individual health issues, nutrition issues were handled daily. All the production and related costs of the series were borne by DST. The total fund allocation for Anna FM in 1 year was around Rs. 14 lakhs, much more than the total Runni-G expense of the station. Project proposal. To get such kind of funding, the CR station has to come up with what is known as project proposal. A project proposal deals with a specific project, usually a program or series of programs which the CR station feels will be useful to the community but requires presence of experts, research associates and additional field equipment. All these are incorporated in the proposal. For instance, you may approach the State Health Department for a project on maternal and child health. Among the details you should include in your project proposal are 1. Name of Proj ECT. 2. Reason for the project, dealing with motivation, why you think the project is important. 3. Objectives of the project. 4. Description of the projects. Time schedule of the programs, how long the project will take, when it will begin and end. 6. Budget, breakup of the costs, like production, transport, payment for experts, if any, airtime costs etc. for the entire series. It is important to bear in mind that outside projects should not compromise the values of the CR station or its editorial independence. 3.3.2 Non-broadcast revenue. Times community radio stations have to run on a non-profit financial model, but a station is free to generate finance to cover its costs. Like any other organization, community radio stations are allowed to generate revenue through it, below-the-line activities like fundraising, membership fees, sale of goods and services, etc. Since these are not broadcast activities, they are not covered by the community radio policy or the advertising code, but they may be regulated by other laws and local regulations. In any case, while generating non-broadcast revenue also, the CR station is expected to follow the conventions of the local communities and district administration and the same high standards of ethics as in the case of on-air activities. The community radio broadcaster should always bear in mind that the purpose of revenue generation, whatever may be the form, is purely for sustainability of the community radio station. 3.3.2 1. Donor funding. Under India's CR guidelines, license holders for community radio stations can take funding from multilateral agencies, like the United Nations. Donor funds are mostly available for seed funding, like one-time expenses for purchasing equipment and setting up the station, and not for running the station on a daily basis. There are strict rules and regulations for receiving international donor funds. The government departments are gradually opening up the possibility of funding specific area-based CR projects. Multinational companies and leading corporations are now venturing into the social sector, and they look for good developmental activities to support. We can think of effective means of channeling CSR funding and support into the development of the community. Radio stations. For example, a software company has come forward to install and maintain the computers and other related software required for running a CR station. Such partnerships could cut down on the running costs of the CR station. As noted earlier, while community radio should welcome funding and support from all sources, especially from local institutions, it should be careful not to allow funding to become the overriding concern of the station or sacrifice its independence for the sake of financial support. 3.3.2 Internships. Times. There are several universities like IGNOU and other educational institutions offering courses in community radio and various radio-related subjects. Students of radio and mass communications could be provided internship summer training at the community radio stations, with hands-on training on the equipment, for which a fee could be charged. Malay. Community radio in Sri Lanka offers regular internships to students of university journalism departments in Colombo, and the station is paid for these internships. 3.3.2.3 Studio rentals. Apart from the broadcast hours and production hours, the studios in a community radio station would be relatively free. The spare capacity of the studios could be profitably leased out to local traders and companies for recording programs and advertisements. The CR station could also produce the advertisement spots for local traders, which would generate another revenue stream. Local musicians and folk artists may want to use the studios for recording their songs, which they could use as a show reel or even sell commercially as cassettes and CDs. Such innovative and off-air use of their infrastructure would bring in much-needed revenues for the CR station. Times 13.3.2.4 Subscriptions and donations. Radio Lumbini in Nepal is a cooperative of 95 members who all bought one share of $40. In Community Radio Madan Pokhara, Nepal, the villagers set aside a portion of rice each day for the radio station, Mushtidan, and this now represents a significant percentage of the radio station's budget. A simple idea like donating rice is a practical way to increase local participation in and sustainability of local community radio. A CR station can request its listeners to support it by asking for donations in different ways. Membership fee, subscription of a CR station newsletter, donation to specific social service activities of the CR station, discussion with community members to decide the membership fee and make them partners in the activity have proved to be very successful model in many CR stations outside India. As UNESCO has noted, the contribution of the people in cash and kind has benefited the station and the radio listeners' clubs in various ways. It has improved the sustainability of the station in long run. It has also contributed to increasing the listeners' sense of ownership and responsibility over the radio station. They now feel that they have more authority in decision-making about programming and policy of the station. At the same time, the radio clubs have also been able to expand and strengthen their social, cultural and advocacy activities. 13.3.2.5 Fundraisers and non-broadcast projects. Many CR stations across the world also organize innovative fundraising activities like on-air and off-air competitions, ticketed public concerts, lucky draws, road shows, etc. Such fundraisers may be required to meet unforeseen expenses, like replacing damaged equipment. Bush Radio in South Africa runs projects like a daycare center, a children's radio program, school outreach programs on AIDS and drug awareness, and an alternative education program for youth, which are all funded by local corporations. 13.3.2.6 Sale of programs. There is a demand for good audio programs both in India and from ethnic radio stations across the world where people of Indian origin are present, for folk and ethnic music by traditional artists in their original form. A CR station could earn reasonable revenues by selling its music programs across the world, or even by broadcasting them on the internet. Soon it may become possible to share or sell programs to other local radio stations, but it is for each CR station to decide whether it wants to share its programs with other communities at a cost or for free. 13.3.2.7 Merchandising, sale of memorabilia, products, etc. Radio stations in most parts of the world also earn money by selling station memorabilia, like branded t-shirts, coffee mugs, caps, etc., or any other product that is locally famous, like pottery, leather goods, toys, and other handicrafts. CR stations in our country have not started thinking seriously about revenue earning or raising funds for sustainability. Most CR stations so far have been set up by educational institutions where the infrastructures as well as running costs are being met by the governing body of the institution. 13.4 Summary. To run a successful community radio and make it self-sustaining, you need to develop traditional and innovative methods of earning revenues, without compromising the core values and editorial independence of the station. Revenue can be generated both from on-air as well as off-air activities. It should be noted that, as per regulatory requirements, the license holder of the CR station is required to submit audited annual accounts to the government, clearly showing the income and expenditure incurred and the assets and liabilities of the CRS. Thank you.